Welcome to Work from the Inside Out, a podcast that highlights real-life stories, practical strategies, and best practices for transitioning your career from unhappiness and dissatisfaction to fulfillment, meaning, and joy. Now here is your host, career and executive coach, Tammy Guler-Loeb.
Hey everybody, I am so excited to introduce my guest today, Alicia Ramsdell. Alicia is the founder and CEO of Mindful Career Path, designing career fulfillment in collaboration with clients' professional passion and energy. Previous to her current position, Alicia led over a 15-year career in corporate America. She started a life by default in accounting roles, but later mindfully cultivated a life by design in career development roles. She is a certified career services provider, a global career development facilitator, and holds a certificate in mindfulness-based stress reduction techniques. Alicia brings insight around best practices in career development strategies while also leveraging stress to elevate your life's work. Alicia is excited to join us to share her experience in making career fulfillment a career reality. She joins us from north of Boston, Massachusetts. Well, welcome, neighbor. So happy to have you here, Alicia.
Thank you, Tammy. I appreciate you, welcoming me on the show. And just one thing to add, I've since received a certificate in organizational mindfulness. So that was an exciting journey to be a part of that.
Well, the other thing that I am aware of is that you did a really amazing TEDx talk as well, which I've watched more than once, which I think I want to point out to people because I think that is really a worthwhile thing. We'll make sure to have a link to that in the show notes. So, Alicia, as you know, on Work from the Inside Out, we love to begin at the beginning, talk about your formative years, and just see how those may or may not have influenced where you've landed today. So take us back to some of those years and tell us a little bit about where you began.
Certainly. So I grew up, as you mentioned before, north of Boston, Massachusetts, and it was a family of 4 girls, and both my parents worked and very much involved in our day-to-day lives. And what I learned from my parents at a very young age is that family was always first, right? So you did what you had to do to take care of your family. And I watched my parents work very hard to, bring us up in a world where they expected us to go to college, but not only expected us to go to college, but worked financially hard to, be able to earn that opportunity for us. And I am forever grateful for that because now as myself, as a parent of 2 young children, I realize how expensive college is, but also how much time, effort, and energy it takes to pursue a career. And I feel as though in my parents' generation, it wasn't necessarily about, passion driven or purpose driven. It was more you financially supported your family. So those were the values I was brought up on. At a very young age. To support financially was, number one in priorities.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can relate to that. I mean, I will say I grew up with parents who loved what they did for work, but I think those values of, food on the table, roof over your head, be grateful for what you have, those things were important first. And if you can find something you love to do, that's terrific. But yeah, four girls, that was a busy household.
Absolutely. And from what I remember just in my very early days, when I was in school, the area that I always excelled in, and I worked hard, but I don't feel like I had to put as much effort into it, was mathematics. And that started at a young age all the way through high school. So when college was even, brought up in conversation, I just assumed you went into whatever you were quote unquote good at.
Yeah.
And if I was good at mathematics, I just said, all right, well, what can I do with mathematics? And I started to ask around, and many people, recommended accounting. And I didn't really, young and, naive or young and immature, I don't know which you'd like to call it, but I didn't really think about the profession itself. I just said, that sounds good, because people told me, oh, well, accounting is job security and you can make a lot of money.
Yeah.
Both of those sounded excellent to me. So that's how I chose what major I would pursue when I went to Bentley University. And throughout the college experience, I had an inkling that I didn't love what I was going to do for a career if I stayed in accounting. But once I started something, I always felt the need to finish it, to prove that, okay, this subject might be hard, this career path might be difficult, but it's going to, again, provide financially for myself at that time, as well as in the future hopes of providing for my family.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where I started. And unfortunately, that's where I see a lot of people start. They just start somewhere they think they're good at, and they don't really think through what their lifestyle would look like beyond that first year after graduating in that role.
Right. I think some kids even, they graduate from college, even if they've worked a little bit or worked some or done an internship, they get out of school and it's almost like a shock. They call it adulting or welcome to the adult world. And it's a shock, like, oh, this is what I've been preparing for? Uh-huh. Okay. Well, what else? I thought am I supposed to keep learning or just crank it out, And,
Sure.
And I think part of that is also, how was work portrayed to you growing up, right? And is it just a means to an end, or can it be more? And it sounds like even in those early years, there was this little voice in you sort of starting to say, is this what I really want? I know it makes a lot of sense. It definitely sort of checks off some of the boxes, but it sounded like there were a few other boxes on that list of yours that were starting to show up.
You're absolutely right. And for me, when I started my career, I stayed in it and I just assumed that from 9 to 5, this is what people do.
Yeah.
They work in a job to make money and they don't necessarily love it. And then outside of that 9 to 5, Monday through Friday, then they do what they love. So that's the assumption I held for a long time. And there's this term called identity foreclosure. And that term means when you're so heavily invested in an identity without really ever exploring other options, other opportunities. So for me, imagine going through school at a young age, excellent at math, then starting college years with a major in accounting, continuing on, doubling down and getting a master's in taxation. And now I'm in this career, and this is years and years of my life being invested in this identity of exactly what I just explained, right? An accounting student, someone good at math. And someone always that wanted to take the secure route, right? I wanted the job security and so forth. So I was so heavily invested in this identity, I never really took the time to explore where I was thriving, what I was excited to learn more about, and other opportunities to pursue.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I see that all the time. I mean, I think we all do in one way or another, and yet, how many of us know people who live that way, right? They it's like, well, this is the work person, and then this is the person outside of work, as if they're two separate people in some ways, or two separate lives, and they don't question it. It's just, this is the way it's supposed to be. In fact, to have an expectation that you might really enjoy going to work, or God forbid, love your work, right? It's just not even on the table. It doesn't even show up on the landscape. And I don't say that to be critical of people, because I think many people were raised to believe that this is the way it's supposed to be. right?
I agree. I
Yeah.
100% agree. And the thing for me was throughout my career, it was about 15 plus years in corporate America. So started in public accounting and then went into an investment management firm. And I was in one particular company for 11 years total. Now, people might say, wow, that seems insane that you would stay somewhere in a role that you weren't really loving, right? Specifically to the responsibilities of tax and accounting. But the beauty of where I was is I had roughly, let's call it 7 to 8 leaders throughout my corporate America experience.
Oh, wow.
And though I would say 5 of them were absolutely amazing, right?
Wow.
The leaders that you would think of that you would want. They were engaging with your career. They supported you. They didn't micromanage you or handhold while you were trying to get to the next level. You know, they would give you constructive feedback, but at the same time, they were there to support you. And like I said before, to engage in your career. So I do feel grateful to have those individuals come into my life. And for those individuals, as well as other wonderful colleagues that I got to work with during that time, I believe that's why I stayed as long as I did in that space.
So you really hit a nail on a head that, you know, a lot of people, when they leave a job, they leave a boss or they leave a corporate culture, right? And what you're describing here is out of those 8 leaders that you worked under, 5 of them really showed you or encouraged you, supported your growth. When people feel that their growth is being supported, it's an acknowledgement of who they are. It's a belief in their ability to contribute. And that kind of acknowledgement means a lot more than what you're actually even doing day to day, even though what you're doing day to day is what is part of that picture, right? And I found that more and more people say to me, you know, I could be doing anything as long as I get to work with this group of people, or I get to work under this boss, or I just love the people. And, you know, it's not to say that they would do just anything at all, but they definitely, they definitely prefer the right culture and the right kind of support over the actual day-to-day, let's say, tasks of the job. Now, that said, you know, there's always a sort of a middle ground, but with a blend. But that what you're describing makes perfect sense to me why you stayed, because you had the opportunity to grow, try probably some new things, different things. And, you know, when you're good at something, it is encouraging to accomplish things. Even if you're not in love with it, it was meeting many of your needs. It just wasn't meeting some of the needs that you later decided needed to be met, right? And I'm glad that you outlined some of the qualities of those leaders that really made a difference for you, because I think that sometimes when people either are looking for their next opportunity or are thinking about what matters most to them in work, the first thing I hear out of a lot of people's mouths is, you know, well, what does it pay? Or what's the salary? They're not even thinking about what the whole compensation package is, which can be, you know, can really vary dramatically. And I think sometimes the compensation package sends a message loud and clear about how much a company is invested in its people. So, you know, it's just that mindset that people don't realize that there's so much more to look at. I love. I have not heard this identity foreclosure phrase before. That's one that I'm going to borrow, because it really it captures exactly what I see a lot of people are encountering. Is they get caught up in that comfort zone of even being downright miserable. It's like better to have the devil you know than the devil you don't know. And yet they don't even start to look and explore and see what's possible. And they think that, well, I couldn't possibly make a change right now. It's like, well, who says you have to make it right now? maybe it takes time to make a change. Like, I think about your story, right? 15 plus years. You were noodling on this for quite some time. You didn't just sort of wake up one morning and say, I think I'll quit my job and do something completely different.
Right.
Right? You evolved into it.
Yeah. And from identity foreclosure to, right, this preconceived paved road that you're supposed to go on, right? I started slowly but surely. I mean, we're talking 15 years, so maybe I'm slow to pick up on things.
No, you're not. I think a lot of people spent many years, in fact, more than that. I mean, you've listened to the podcast, there are some people 20, 30 years in before they pivoted. So no. Everything that you did up to that point put you in the best position possible to then make the changes you made. That's the way I choose to look at it. And I think I encourage people listening that everything that you've done till now, even if you think, oh, I should have, I could have, I didn't, forget all that thinking and just start from now. Get the information you need to figure out where you want to go and make a plan. But don't feel like it has to happen overnight, right? Yours didn't happen overnight.
Certainly didn't. And the beauty of it, though, is I started to follow, slowly but surely, I started to follow gut instincts. And, I don't always bet on gut instincts, or at least I didn't before. Yeah. But slowly but surely, I started to bet on myself. I started to bet on how I was feeling about certain situations. Because now I'm finding that, let's call it 9 times out of 10, my gut instincts are at least pointed in the right direction. So as an example, throughout that 15-year experience, there were times when I thought, well, maybe if I'm in a different company, right, a different environment, maybe things will be better or different, or I'll feel a different way about tax and accounting. So I specifically remember one instance. I was interviewing at a company, and I walked up to the receptionist, and I said, my name is Alicia. I'm here to speak to so-and-so for my interview. She said, great, I'll give him a call. So she is on the telephone calling this hiring manager, and it's not on speaker, but I can hear through the phone when she calls and says, Alicia is here. He starts yelling at this receptionist I don't even know why, but he wasn't ready. He was busy. He was bothered by her interrupting. I don't even know. But I could hear on the other end that he was yelling at her, and I could see her facial expressions that she was uncomfortable. So she gets off the phone. She said, he'll be with you shortly. He's just in the middle of something. So I said, great. Before I stepped into that official interview with this hiring manager, I had already made up my mind. I said, always look how everyone is treated, Absolutely. Right? From the hiring manager to the receptionist to the janitor, whomever it is, how they're treated, how anybody, but specifically for me, how that hiring manager was treating that receptionist. What would make me any different walking into this office? That's right. So I followed my gut, and, of course I said no. I was offered the role, but of course I said no, because I knew that my gut was telling me the right thing. And I have taken that to heart, that I try to express that to my own children, that, hey, how you see or how you treat others or how you see others treating others, just remember that. There might be a reason, but just remember that and take that with you.
Yeah. You just made me think of something. It's like, I remember being impressed when I first knew my husband, how he and his mother interacted with one another, and the ways in which he was, just the way he was with her impressed me, or the way he was with his niece and his nephew. And those things mattered to me, but I don't know that I actually thought it through as consciously as now that you're mentioning this. So it's true. You learn a lot about people by the ways in which you observe the way different interactions go. And, I'm always telling people, make sure you try to talk to someone who's either worked in a place in the past or is there now, and just find out, like, what is it like just to be there day to day? And see if you can get some good anecdotal information, because it's not, as we're saying, it's not just about the job itself.
Yeah,
That's a great. And in some ways, it's like your powers of observation, or your auditory powers were quite good. It's like staring you in the ears, so to speak, in that case, right? I'm curious, what some other, you say you started to bet on yourself. And I like the example you gave where you said, well, maybe I'll just look into some other companies. Were there other things that you started to ask yourself questions about at that time? Because I think about a situation where you've put in, you've gotten a bachelor's and a master's degree. You've probably, been promoted several times. You're making a good salary. And I've heard this time and again, I'm sure you have too. I've put in all these years into this. I've invested so much into this. How can I walk away from it? Right. And yet I say to people, how can you not?
Right.
You know what it is doing to you, but I understand, it's fear of the unknown, and is there really anything better out there? So I'm curious to hear what other signs or clues started to show up that made you continue to look elsewhere.
Well, there were a lot of experiences within corporate America that were great. And then there were some that were not so great. But two personal moments or experiences in my life really transformed to where I am now. And one was my father was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease at a young age, right? Mm-hmm. He was early 50s. Even signs of it before then were in his late 40s. So very, very young. And I also had two children. So two separate stories, but, my father gets this diagnosis at a young age. And then later on, after, further on down the road, I ended up having two kids of my own. So the first piece of going along with my father being diagnosed with Parkinson's at a young age, when he received that diagnosis, I was in my, I don't know exactly how old I was, but late 20s, early 30s, let's call it.
Yeah.
And he was working full time. He had a very vibrant life. To receive that diagnosis, years after that, he ended up going on, long-term disability and eventually retiring fully. And I remember thinking to myself, wow, when I was younger, I just imagine I'm going to live until I'm 100 and I'm going to retire at whatever the retirement age is, 65. And then I'm going to travel the world with my husband and family. That's just, This is this young, again, maybe naive, but vision that I had. Right. And I thought to myself, I watched my father, eventually have to leave his organization. And then I watched my mother retire and, she obviously took care of him too. But I saw what they did. And what they did was they knew that there was going to be a limited amount of years where they could travel, right? Just on physical limitations when you're a Parkinson's patient. So what they did was at that time, they were both retired and they traveled everywhere they could, whether they were taking cruises or traveling just around the United States or even outside the United States. They were just soaking up every moment. And I realized at that moment how limited our time is here on earth. And when, you are, diagnosed with something at a young age, or you watch a parent diagnosed with something at a young age, it makes you realize how short your life experience can be, and to not really waste on other things that don't fill you up, aren't really in fulfillment for you. Yeah. So that was a big experience or mindset shift for me. And once I saw that, or I lived through that, what happened for me was I started to explore, well, where in my life am I thriving? Where do I want to learn more about? And so from that perspective, I started to think, well, when I come home at night, where do I talk about when do I talk about my best days to my husband? I wasn't going home and talking to my husband about, this new tax regulation. Or tax code. So what I did say was, I got to work with college interns today, and I talked to them about their careers, and I helped them, get introduced to, various people within the company because they were excited to learn more about this. Or I worked with colleagues or team members, and I helped them in their career. I got to educate them by presenting. And I started to see this thread through all of these quote unquote best days of my career in that time frame. And fast forward to the time when I had 2 kids of my own. And at night, I would lay with them and we would talk about, what do you want to be when you grow up? And, they would share, these, lofty goals of theirs. And I realized they would turn the question around on me. So, Mama, what did you do today at work? And tell me about what you do.
Oh.
And I realized I wasn't living the truth that I was trying to instill in them. I couldn't get excited about talking about tax and accounting. So between those 2 life experiences, I started to realize that I need to be in a role where I am excited and proud to share with my family, right? With the people that I love. And for me, that was career development, right? Encouraging individuals to live in career fulfillment, pursue their purpose in life, right? Through their passion, through their professional passion. And there's a whole way I went about this, but I'll stop there because that's the journey that took me to where I am now as the business owner of Mindful Career Path.
Right. So, your father's unfortunate illness definitely shined a light on some things for you. These unfortunate things do that, right? And I know that you talk about that in your TEDx talk as well. And so I'm curious about the sort of the time frame between the timing of your father's illness and you starting to really, kind of get that sense of, gee, life is really happening now, and it could be shorter than I think. I better rethink a few things here. And I love the way you describe the conversations with your kids. These are the kinds of things I thought about pretty early on because I was already coaching when my daughter was young. And so I love hearing another parent talking about things and thinking about how it impacts their kids, because I think a lot of people are so focused on how do I make a living? How do I provide for my family? And they think that's enough. And they're thinking about the example that they're actually setting for their kids about what it means to go to work or what it means to have a life of purpose. And I'm not talking about, having to become some, altruistic, let's accomplish world peace kind of thing.
Right.
I'm talking about just feeling like you can, be proud of what you're doing and feel like it's accomplishing all of those things, including making a living and a lifestyle that satisfies you. So what was that process like for you, or what was that time frame for you between the time that you really got clear about that and then decided to move in that direction of your own business?
So it wasn't something that, the diagnosis happened or I had kids and then I just, snapped my fingers and everything changed. What I did was I looked at, okay, I am where I am right now. So at that point I was in corporate America, and I said, I know I don't love tax and accounting necessarily as far as the responsibilities go, but I am making a living and there is job security. How can I bring in these other aspects that I do really enjoy into my current role? It wasn't necessarily that, I was thinking about starting my own business at, much younger.
Okay.
I just thought, how can I bring these aspects in? So as an example, I remember there was an email that went out from one of our leaders within corporate America, and they said, we want to start running these, not lunch and learn series, but really we had a whole department and we were all responsible for various aspects of certain products. And they wanted to train everybody else on what everybody else was doing, just so everyone could see a holistic approach for, the products. So I honestly ran into the office of my leader and I said, I want to be the first one to do it. I'd like to talk about what we do and, how it impacts the products and the clients and so forth. So I led this, I practiced and I prepared and all this stuff, but I led this presentation in front of my peers about what I was doing. And I remember feeling so wonderful when I left and I went home, just to be able to be in front of a group of people who had limited knowledge on what we did and educate them. And I have brought that forward in other aspects of my life, as I'm also an adjunct professor at a local university, but I love educating others. So I looked for areas within my current organization, within my current role, where I could take what I enjoyed, the presentation giving, the education, the career development, right, working with college interns that came through, and I tried to instill those responsibilities within my day-to-day. And I feel as though that really allowed me to stay or feel fulfilled in certain aspects of where I was, and at the same time have that job security. And it wasn't until after I had my kids, which were, 2012, 2013 timeframe, that I started to consider other options outside of corporate America. And how I did that from a career development perspective, but how I did that was I had a lot of conversations with various people in different spaces within career development. So as an example, I used to think, I would want to be in higher education, potentially full time as a career advisor.
Yeah.
So I spoke with a lot of career advisors in higher education. And then I got to know somebody that ran his own career consulting practice. So I spoke with him and others around him about running your own business. And having those conversations, I was able to pull from them different aspects of what I liked or wanted to hear more on and learn more on. And there were different aspects I didn't really want to get involved in. So at the end of all of these conversations and pursuing these learning opportunities, I realized I wanted to create something that was my own, right? I wanted to combine career development with the inevitable stress that comes along with our careers. So the stress management component or stress leverage component. And that's 2019. I left corporate America and I officially started my Mindful Career Path business in January 2nd of 2020.
So I love the way you describe your process and how you did that. And then also, to say, look, I had my kids to 2012, 2013. And then it was, a good 6 years later when you really sort of hung up your shingle, so to speak. But I'm sure you did some training and other things in the interim. It wasn't like you just said, okay, I'm leaving my job and now I'm a coach, I'm a this, I'm a that. I'm sure there are a lot of things you did in between, but I think it's important for people to hear that you didn't just walk away. You had a very strong value for having a level of job security, financial security. You took care of those things. You took care of your family. And it also sounds like you probably had good conversations with your husband about making these decisions. And I say this to people all the time. Don't make these decisions in a vacuum. There are other people in your life who you want their support if you're going to take, what feels like a leap. And so it sounds like you made those decisions within a good time frame. Probably your kids were a little older. It was a better time to make those changes. There's all kinds of reasons why, right?
Certainly.
Yeah.
Certainly. And, what's beautiful now is that I involve my kids in various aspects of what I do in my work. So as an example, I was a speaker at a women's conference this past fall, and my daughter, based on scheduling, had to come with me. and she sat in on, the speaking engagement, and she was able to be there when I was fielding questions from the audience. She participated in some of the other events and what's the word I'm looking for? Exercises that other speakers were running. And when we got into the car afterwards, she said, I really want to do what you do when I grew up. And I said, oh, you want to talk about careers? She said, no, but I want to be in front of people singing, It wasn't as though I was singing up there, but what she saw was an engaged audience and people wanting to hear what I had to say. And so for her, she views that as, especially after my TEDx talk, she sees mama on a stage or in front of an audience and people are engaged. And that is inspiring her in her own way.
Yeah.
And that makes me feel as though I made the best decision possible. Although starting a business, running a business, it's not easy.
It's not for the faint of heart. No, no, but it helps when you also, it does help if you're in a good relationship where you're not the only one bringing in income. I will totally admit to that definitely helps, especially when your partner doesn't mind getting up and going to an office every day.
Yeah.
And having
Absolutely.
some steady income. I know I've been very fortunate in that way myself. So I want to switch gears a little bit here. I love the story about bringing your daughter to the conference. I've done the same thing with my daughter, and lo and behold, she works in people and culture now. How about that?
Yeah.
So you've written a children's book. Tell us about that.
Sure. So continuing on with my kids and our conversations and them inspiring me, to make that leap eventually to do something that I loved. I felt as though I was talking to, again, my own kids, but then also their friends and so forth about, what do you want to be when you grow up? What do you like about what you're doing now? And this kind of conversation. So I said, why not put this in writing? Right? I felt as though I was sharing the same stories or the same questions over and over again. So I decided to write a children's book, and the basis of the story is there were so many in the book. There were so many people telling this character, oh, well, he can kick so fast when he's a baby. So he's going to be a track star when he grows up. Or a preschool teacher sees him building blocks and making imaginary worlds. Like, oh, he's going to be an architect one day. Or a math teacher sees that he finishes his math test first. He's going to be an engineer one day. And then at the end of the story, it's, I love this person, but I did not become an architect. I love this person, but I did not become an engineer. What I became is this. And what's great about that is I became the one and only incredible me. And that's the name of the book, The One and Only Incredible Me. And it's all about, there's going to be a lot of well-intentioned friends, family members, adults, and so forth that tell you what you could be or what you should be. And that's great to have that support. And I would never, knock that. But at the end of the day, what makes you incredible and unique is you. And what you want to take from life, it starts with you. So that was the book message that I was trying to get across. Children, really, the ages are from preschool to about third grade before it gets a little too young for the older kids. But it's been a blast because what I've been able to do is go to local schools, local Barnes and Nobles, different reading opportunities, and see how the kids interact with the book and how excited they get to share what they want to be when they grow up. And
I love it. I love it. Oh, I love that. I'm already thinking about a few people I'm going to give it to. So, and then you're working on another book too. Tell us about that. That's for a different reader population.
Sure. So that's for the professionals that are either starting out in their career development or potentially pursuing, a career transition. And it dives into really everything that I've worked on with clients, not specific to client names, but whether it's understanding how can I identify where I want to be next in my career?
Mm-hmm.
What are the best next steps? You know, how do I create this brand around what I want to do next? Whether that's career documentation, like resumes and also LinkedIn profiles, whether that's, you know, marketing those efforts, you know, beyond just social media, but in networking conversations and so forth.
Right.
So, and then there's also that twist of mindfulness is, yes, you will have inevitable stress along the way.
Right.
What are some mindfulness-based stress reduction techniques or leveraging techniques that you can use? And what I try to do throughout the book is I bring up my own personal experiences, because I feel the best way that we can educate others is through our own experiences and then what we've learned from them. So that's, the book is a little bit storytelling, a little bit education on, you know, some research backed industry trends and techniques.
Sounds like a very both engaging and practical resource. And do you have a title yet for the book? Or are you working on that?
I do have a title.
Oh, we're not divulging it yet. Is that right?
Well, there's a swear in it, so it's on the title. On the title, there's asterisks and so forth, and the swear word. So I don't want people to say the swear word because I don't promote bad language. But I couldn't think of any other way to explain it other than. But I can tell you I could tell you the name, and I won't say the bad word, but
okay,
because I have children of my own, and I feel like I have to spell out swear words, and although they can spell, so I don't know if that's helping. But it's called the Career Energy Book. What the F am I doing?
I love it.
So I apologize for those that don't like poorly.
You don't have to apologize for that. We've all ridden the school bus. We've all, we don't. It's one thing to choose whether you use that language or not. It's another thing to whatever. I love it. Love it, love it, love it. I can't wait for it to come out. I am going to definitely support it. So I'm so excited. So tell us, what are the kinds of things that you're doing today? I know you're speaking and you're educating people. You're an adjunct professor. You're coaching.
So at Mindful Career Path, it's let's call it a threefold approach. It's corporate mindfulness. So I am a corporate partner. Mindful Career Path goes in as a corporate partner to organizations, and they have career development conversations one-on-one with the employees, and they're all confidential. Right. So what happens is, let's just say I'm working with a team of 30. I have individual conversations with each one of those, and let's call it monthly. And instead of there being a track back to like HR and people feeling that they can't really say everything, what it is people are allowed to be vulnerable, not worry that there's a trace back to anywhere other than our conversations. And what we do is we take the general theme for all of these 30 individuals. What are these few general themes that are happening in the organization that could potentially change or that are going really well? And we bring those general ideas to senior leadership with strategies that they could use and implement change or, I guess, empower more with the things that are going really well. So that's the first piece. And part of that is keynote speaking. So I'll go into organizations and talk about various topics, including living in career fulfillment, maybe leadership development, and then more of the early talent leadership development as well. The second component is there is individual career coaching, which I call career mindfulness. And that's, again, anybody that's looking through their job search strategy, or they're transitioning from one career to the next, or coming back into the workforce, like as an example, somebody that went on maternity leave and never went back to the original organization.
Right.
And then the third piece is I created a digital career development course. So that's more for individuals that are looking to learn as they go at their own time, self-directed, and they have ownership to that course for a lifetime. And
Wonderful.
It really just depends on where organizations or individuals are at in their moment.
That's great. So people have many different ways that they can learn from you and engage with you. So what's the best way? And we'll have tons of links to all the, your books and all the things that you're up to. What's the best way for people to get started in reaching out to you and finding you?
Certainly. So if you go to mindfulcareerpath.com, on there, all of our social media accounts, and there's also a chat bot there that send a message to and will respond pretty quickly.
Nice. Oh, so exciting. I love, love, love what you're up to and how you're blending the mindfulness with the career development. I think that is so critically important. I always say, look, life is always uncertain, but it does feel like in the last few years, that sense of uncertainty just has, I think, been multiplied in some ways for many of us. And so I think that kind of uncertainty brings about a lot of, we're seeing it, right? We're seeing it with a lot more of a focus on mental health issues and all kinds of things. So I think what you're doing is critically important. And I'm really happy that we're talking about this. So a lot of people listening to this podcast are thinking about what their next moves might be or beginning to think about it. What would be a key piece of advice you might give them as they're thinking about their next steps?
So I'm actually reading a book right now. It's called Traction. It's called Get a Grip on Your Business by Gino Wickman. And it's an excellent read as a business owner. But I'm going to read an excerpt from it that really stuck out to me.
Ooh.
And it's something I've been, saying in my own way, but I really liked how this was put. So it's called,
Great.
The right seat means that each of your employees is operating within his or her area of greatest skill and passion inside your organization, and that the roles and responsibilities expected of each employee fit with his or her unique ability. Now, the unique ability is a concept created by Dan Sullivan, and it's registered trademark of the Strategic Coach. And I just loved the idea of being in the right seat in their unique ability. So as far as advice or recommendations, I created this 4-quadrant strategy that I could help people identify what their unique ability is to get them into their right seat. And the 4-quadrant strategy is really, imagine a piece of paper broken out into 4 squares, but it's where are you thriving? Where are you currently successful? Then the bottom left quadrant is where are you not successful yet, but you aspire to learn more about, you want to learn more about something. And then on the flip side, on the right side, the top right is where are you successful, but you don't really even enjoy it. And then on the bottom right, it's where do you just have responsibilities? Maybe you're not even successful in them and you don't really care to pursue them more. So when you think about that 4-quadrant, how can you figure out what your unique ability is? If you think about the left side, where are you thriving? Where are you successful? And where do you want to learn more? If you combine all of those, to me, although separate from Dan Sullivan's, trademark unique ability concept, that to me is how you could help at least start the guiding process of finding your unique ability.
I love that.
And then pursuing the right seat in various organizations. And how that could happen is just by knowing this information so that you can clearly articulate it to individuals within organizations during informational interviews, networking conversations, or just everyday conversations with people in your community.
Yeah, I love it. It sounds a lot like knowing yourself from the inside out. I can't help it but say it.
Right?
But it's about knowing yourself and starting from there, right? And I love the framework you just described. That is brilliant. I'm so excited about everything you're doing. And I don't say that all the time. Like, I'm not one who goes into superlatives all the time. Alicia, this has been delightful. I think when your book comes out, we have to have you back, and we have to shine a light on your next book. I love saying that, on your next book. And thank you so much for your support of this show and of my work as well. You've been enormously supportive. You're a wonderful, wonderful colleague. And I can't wait to put this episode out. So thank you for being here.
You got it. And one more piece of advice for everyone out there is work from the inside out. It's a starting point. It's a life goal, and it will continue through in your career. So start working from the inside out today.
Oh, and I didn't even pay her to say that. Thanks again.
Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed my interview with Alicia Ramsdell. It was so interesting to speak with her and learn about her early life and her career transitions and all the work that she's doing today. What is your key takeaway from our interview? If you are interested in any of the resources mentioned in today's podcast, you can find them in the show notes on my website at tammygoularloeb.com/podcast. Just look for episode 230. Are you anticipating your next professional move? Check out my award-winning book, Work from the Inside Out: Break Through 9 Common Obstacles and Design a Career That Fulfills You. It's available in print and ebook editions through my website, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, independent bookstores, and you can also request it through your local public library. If you were inspired by this episode with Alicia, please share it with your friends and colleagues, and please do subscribe so you don't miss the next episode. Remember, subscribing is always free. If you're enjoying the podcast, it would mean so much to me if you would write a brief and honest review on Apple Podcasts. It's easy to find. Just go to my website, tammygoularloeb.com/podcast, and click on the Apple Podcast button and follow the instructions provided there. You can also help to sustain this podcast by buying me a cup of coffee. Just go to buymeacoffee.com/TammyGL. Since this podcast is self-funded, your support is noticed and appreciated. Thank you so much for listening. And remember, it is never too late or too impossible to increase your sense of fulfillment and satisfaction in your work and other meaningful activities. Let me know how it's going for you. I would love to hear from you. Bye for now.
Thank you for listening to the Work from the Inside Out podcast. For more information, you can find us at www.workfromtheinsideout.com.